Council of Government, March the 24th. We are glad you are here and in person and online. We are a little short of a quorum, and we appreciate y'all joining us here today. So we're going to go ahead and get started some of our information, and hopefully in just a little while, Victoria will magically say we have a quorum. So we're going to start off with our invocation. As Ms. Ann Harmon comes up, then we want to get an update on the COG staff. Joe Perry, how about you? Him and his wife that asked you to.
Yes, sir. So Mr. Perry has been ill and breathing with a lung. He had a lung transplant, and his family and wife just asked us to keep him in your thoughts as he is recovering. And Joe works in our aging program. He's been our information referral assistant specialist.
And he was waiting on transplant and got it?
Got a lung transplant.
That is fantastic. We lift him up. And Ms. Harmon, if you could have our invocation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you once again to allow us to meet to discuss the needs of the region. We ask that you bless our food, bless the hands that prepared it, and serve it, God. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. We are excited today. We got some new members and 4 new members joining us today. We're going to go alphabetical order, and we're going to start. And we're asking each of our new members 1 minute introductions, please. We'll go with Ms. Kelly Bush from town of Irmo, then Howard Duvall, City of Columbia, Joe Taylor, City of Columbia, and then joining us online, Charlie Westsinger from Lexington County. Mr. Bush.
Yes, hello, I'm Kelly Bush, Irmo Town Council. My goal is to represent around Irmo.
Very good. We're glad to have you. Appreciate you joining us, Mr. Bush. Mr. Duvall, City of Columbia.
I'm Howard Duvall, City of Columbia Council at Large. I have retired from the Fiscal Association, the mayors and council members. Went on the association staff in 1987, retired in 2008. So I have been familiar with the COG for a long, long time. Look forward to serving you.
Well, good. We're the cool people, so we're glad you joined us. Mr. Joe Taylor, City of Columbia.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm Joe Taylor, businessman in Columbia. I was the Secretary of Commerce for the state of South Carolina. I think y'all used to leave my office pretty regularly. From 2005 to 2011, served on the State Infrastructure Bank Board from 12 to 20, and lost my mind and ran for city council.
We're glad to have you. And joining us online is Charlie Westsinger from Lexington County.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I am Charlie Westsinger, Lexington County Council District 6, which basically means I cover a large portion of Irmo and everything on the north side of the lake. So basically all of Chapin and some of Irmo. It's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to working with many of you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Westsinger. Glad to have you. Look forward to working with each of y'all. Glad to have y'all with us. Hey, we get to say some of the most underrated phrase in government business. We have a quorum. So, Victoria, thank you very much. And for all 26 of y'all here today, if you check off the list, if you weren't here, we wouldn't have a quorum. So, thank you. We have 2 guests in person we want to welcome. First, Angie Connor. She is the head of the Council on Aging from Fairfield County. Thanks for all you do. Congratulations on your new facility.
Thank you very much.
Glad to have you. And Lynn Stockman again, Newberry County Council on Aging. Lynn, glad to have you with us. Appreciate both the work both of y'all and your staffs do in Newberry and Fairfield counties. All right. Now we have a quorum. We'll go back to item number 2. Which was approve the order and contents of the overall agenda. Is there a motion to approve the overall contents of the agenda? Mr. Bell, second by Mr. Carrot. If you are in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the overall agenda is approved. Thank you very much. All right, our new folks, at each meeting, we always have some good news from the COG, and then we have a regional spotlight for one of our communities, and then I have a few news highlights. And Mr. Ben Malman, how about getting some good news from the COG?
Yes, sir.
And I want to thank Jason from the COG staff for the electronic stand. Also, Lauren's here from Business Tech. Appreciate Lauren. Y'all being such great hosts.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. I just want to spotlight a few things today in a few of our programs. In the workforce program, wanted to actually highlight a person, his name is Alex, and he's been part of our Midlands Youth Work Experience Program, which is paid work opportunity for youth with no job experience. Alex is actually working with Water Sale, and he's a person with a disability. And this is his first independent job experience. He's been working and doing boat detailing, and this is a critical skill that he is learning in this industry. Water Sales plans on hiring him full-time after he is complete with this program. Through the WEO Youth Program, he's gained valuable experience and has recently opened a bank account and began depositing his first paycheck. So we're really excited about that. Next slide, please. The Ombudsman Program is working, I mentioned this last time, but I wanted to get these dates back out in front of you for volunteer training, and the dates below are the schedule. Then, if you're able to volunteer or share this information out with folks, it would be very helpful for us. This gets volunteers out into the home, into the facilities that we are responsible for, and gives them an opportunity to report back to our long-term ombudsman program if there are any issues. So these are important dates that I'd like you to look at. We're going to have a volunteer appreciation celebration on April 20th, and then advanced directors training on April 13th.
And then I want to, Newberry are taking ombudsman's training. They say Pretoria is great. So that's a great job on that.
Also in the aging program, this is a really special week for the aging program. Everyone has heard of the Meals on Wheels program. This is the 50th anniversary of the senior nutrition program. Critical nutrition that is needed for our seniors. So I just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. All councils on aging are promoting that, and will continue to serve Meals on Wheels for many years into the future.
Next slide, how about bring us the total number of meals served by four back ballpark. Okay. For the annual basis, I could be stunned. I mean, it's where yes, sir.
And then in the planning program, I mentioned this before, in the community and economic development staff has been working with the Brooklyn Lakeview Empowerment Center in West Columbia with the Food Policy Coalition to host a food gathering. It's actually meeting tonight in Casey, and they had met previously in December, but this is a very exciting gathering to solicit input on various solutions to increasing access to healthy food for the entire community around the city.
Good stuff. We appreciate the staff. Thank you. Let's give the staff a round of applause as always. All right, regional spotlight. Each month we go to a different one of our member groups, communities, counties, and towns. This week we're glad to have this month Fairfield County, Mr. Moses Bell, our chairman of Fairfield County Council. Mr. Bell.
Thank you. I thank you all for the opportunity to be able to talk about a lot of the good things that are happening in Fairfield County. One of the things we did groundbreaking for the teacher village last week. The goal of this was to provide affordable living space for our teachers in Fairfield County. Again, the groundbreaking ceremony was March 17th. And it'd be the first teacher village in South Carolina. We have a $2 million startup funded by Fairfield County Community Settlement. And the final village will consist of 22 acres with 75 single family homes. Again, this has been recognized as a subcommittee, a meeting at the General Assembly on Tuesday.
Hey.
Well, that was good.
I saw that in the news. It's very impressive.
Yes. Okay, we also, as most of you know, Fairfield County is definitely a wastewater system. We've even had.
Why ain't your name on
To be able to do
the thing they just play with it? It is Kate.
We're gonna ask everyone online to mute, please.
That name's on there. Your name's not on there. Oh, never mind.
I'm following tomorrow.
Oh, I thought I
I
saw
wanted to
it.
see where all the, you turn the lights on, all the cockroaches go up.
Comedy.
I'm waiting for them to all go underneath the refrigerator.
Okay.
But they're coming out of the network, roadway on District 5 and 6.
I can't pull it up.
Huh?
I can't pull it up. I don't know why.
This one?
No.
Mr. Bell, we appreciate your patience.
Yes, sir.
Back to Fairfield County.
All right, everyone knows that Fairfield County is in desperate need of a wastewater sewage system. So anyway, we're working on that, with mutual agreement with the town of Ridgeway, town of Ridgeway and Fairfield County. We're trying to work through the participation plan now. Again, we've had Gregory Sprouse work with us and try to make sure we formulate this plan. We will work in doing so. Next slide. And then again, that should be Ridgeway community. One of the things we were talking about in our area that, especially in this part of the community, there's no public facility. So we're using, we got a $2.5 million for the main settlement. And what we're gonna do here is have a full kitchen, fitness center. It's gonna be centered around seniors too. Full basketball court, full soccer field, and that kind of thing. So as you kind of look at all the stuff that's going on in Fairfield County, we try to look at it as a well-rounded approach to be able to do a lot of things. And so we take advantage of the settlement with the name. And then on April 6th, we having the Commerce Pad groundbreaking. We've did the grading for a pad so we could put spec buildings and all of this on there. Anyway, the new pad can accommodate a 450,000 square foot building. Again, the Fairfield Commerce Center has all utilities provided by Dominion Energy, True Vista, and the town of Winsboro. And the new pad will save new industry both time and money, as much of the permitting and risk associated with grading such a large parcel has been eliminated. Okay. Next slide. Okay, this is the and beginning in April, probably it's going to be a staggered entry process where we're going to be going into our new facility, the Fairfield County Government Complex, and we'll be going in there. And we took a old historical building, and now we have had a lot of difficulty in trying to get this building ready for occupancy. We've spent a lot of money in trying to do so, and really it's cost us more money than anticipated as we went into this. But anyway, because one of the things that happened, and I want to bring this up just in case other folks try to do this work. This building was not made for single office occupancy. So a lot of the work we had to try to do, then the county ended up having to pay for it. But it's gonna end up being a very beautiful building. And again, we partnered with a developer to repurpose this building. And the complex will house the council chambers, county administration, security, finance, human resources, community development, economic development committee, planning, parks and recreation, 911 call center, and the sheriff department. And again, this is probably going to be a one-stop shop for all county services. And again, we'll start moving in there in April. It's probably going to take us 2 to 3 months to get everybody in there. And while I'm here, I see our county administrator, Mr. Malik Whitaker, is here. And while we're here, I do want to compliment him on the work that he's done to try to ensure that this building meet the needs that we have. Again, and it costs us a lot of money in trying to do it.
Very good, Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Whitaker, very impressive. A lot of great things in Fairfield County. Thank you for updating us today.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
All right, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'd just like to point out that, and congratulate you on doing this. The Mount Zion Institute is something that probably most people have never heard of, but was a very famous school back in its day, and a lot of very prominent people in South Carolina, political people as well as non-political, attended there. And don't ask me to give you a list of them right off the bat, but they really, I mean, it comes up in the history of South Carolina repeatedly, and I think it's a great idea to preserve such an old building.
Yes, sir. That's a good building, Mr. Whitaker. Glad you said it. All right, very good. Well, I always enjoy this regional spotlights. I learned a lot today. We're going to go on now, just news from around the region. A few things I want to highlight. Always some good news going on. We're ambassadors, so not getting up the Midlands. But we'll start on the west. Spectrum has created 350 new jobs in West Columbia on Platte Springs Road. Man, I didn't know they already have 1,000 employees there. And 350 picture there, our fellow board member Todd Cullen is in that picture. So congratulations to Lexington County and the West Columbia area. On Two Notch, this is on WLTX, the Midlands Shopping Center is getting a new name, coming into place. The community new business plan, including a new grocery store next year. And Councilwoman McBride says it's going to be Bring Vitality. So that's some good things. Congratulations to Richland County there. Next, our best friend, Dr. Race is online. Congratulates you. The COG's best friend was recognized for his outstanding apprenticeship program. The article says Midland Tech got to this heavily 5 years ago. They're providing students excellent career training that is now recognized nationally, got a national recognition. So congratulations to Midlands Tech and Dr. Rames. Thanks again for letting us be here. A couple other highlights: a young lady from Lexington, Sierra Bronzel, was crowned Miss South Carolina USA and will compete in Miss USA. Reading about her being, she is very impressive. She speaks 5 languages. Yeah, how about that? So congratulations to her. We'll be pulling for her. Harbor Freight opened in Newberry. That's my picture. I think it's pretty good. It opened Tuesday. So we're excited about Harbor Freight. A couple other things. Y'all may have from the news where we get sports. Being this close to the airport, boy, the Essex teams are going to be stationed here. I think that's really neat. And something we can all be proud of. And then just a personal, if you follow Ukraine, I would suggest on Twitter, or if you look up Isabel, there's a Carolina graduate who's now a war correspondent for the Washington Post. She graduated in 2014, Isabel Kershutin. She's a young lady, and she's in Ukraine doing a fantastic job. She's a big deal for the Washington Post, and you may want to look her up and be proud that she is a Carolina graduate, Isabel Kershutin. And I just Googled Washington Post and you will find her. All right, sports news. I love sports. In the high schools, we have 6 state championship teams from the Midlands. In girls basketball, we had Keenan, Cardinal Newman, and Newberry Academy. Congratulations to them. In boys, Ridgeview and Great Collegiate, and in wrestling, Ben Lippin. So a lot of young people excelling in the Midlands, and we are proud of them. Academics, athletics, all the way through. All right, anybody else have anything they want to mention real briefly in regional news? Thank you very much. We will now go to our consent agenda, which this time is just the minutes. Next meeting, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Ryan, second, Mr. Bell. Any questions or discussion? If not, in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye. Opposed? And that is approved. Item number 3C, our last action item, the regular agenda, the 2020, the TIP amendment, South Main Street. And we have Reginald Simmons, and we also have several folks here from DOT, which we're glad to have, including Barry Maddox, who's the program manager. Mr. Maddox, are you going to speak, I believe?
Yeah, I'd be glad to.
Can you come over here a little bit closer? It'd be great. You've been with DOT 14 years.
Correct.
And so we're glad you're here to tell us about the South Main Street project.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Enjoyed seeing the Mount Zion slide. Both my grandma and both my parents went to Mount Zion. So I'm a Fairfield County boy, so that spoke close to my heart. So excited to see that project move forward. With this, I've updated this body, I believe a couple years ago when y'all first were asking for a project update when you had guide share funds to it. Since then, we've set the project to lettings 3 times, and each time the project has felt we've fallen short of the available funding. So we've allocated additional funds through other sources, and most recently we let the project, and I'd show this in a second. Back in January, we based on some beyond our control, some circumstances, additional funds are needed. We're coming here today to present how we hope to fund the project moving forward. And yeah, next slide, please. So project overview. Again, most of you are aware, but I'll run through this anyways. Next slide, please. So project's going to start at what's actually the front door of the State House, which we most of think is the back. So on the Pendleton Street, Main Street intersection, we're beginning there. We're doing some streetscape improvements to add bike lanes. We're necking down the road. So the existing 5-lane section of South Main. So South Main is 5 lanes, 2 lanes each direction with a 2-way left turn lane. We're necking all that down to a 2-lane road. So 1 lane, travel lane in each way, in each direction. We're adding what we call an inclusion zone. So for tables and stuff for cafes, sidewalks, wider sidewalks, as well as a cycle track. So it's going to be more of a what they call an 8 to 80 corridor. So we're looking to promote people biking, walking, and just kind of give more of the aesthetic feel that you have on the other side of the State House. A different arrangement, but a similar type vibe there. Next slide, please. So again, this some highlights here. This, South Main Capital District Area Plan was completed by the city of Columbia years ago. This project, fits in line with that study or that plan that was completed those years ago. We looked at balance of vehicular function and pedestrians and bicycle function to improve safety for everybody. We're gonna improve the aesthetics, introduce fruit trees, and provide opportunities for placement. This plan, this project is consistent with Columbia's walk, bike, Columbia pedestrian plan that was also approved. Next slide, proposed improvements. Next slide again. As I said, we're reducing the travel way, you can see the existing section out there now with the roads coming in. We're keeping the on-street parking with the exception of one block. So by and large, the parking is going to remain the same. Again, I'll show another slide to show you what it's going to look like. We have a one-way separated cycle track. So bicycles will not be in a traditional bike lane. They'll be in an actual grade separated bike lane, a chute, so to speak, with concrete curb and gutter on either side. We have much wider sidewalks, going to improve the lighting. Right, we're going to go with mast arms, so we're going to get rid of the existing poles out there. There's wood poles out there now for the traffic signals. There's going to be cleaned up with mast arms, much more aesthetically pleasing. And the big thing is we're burying, or Dominion rather, is going underground. So all the existing distribution lines out there are going away. So we have a nice view, clear view of the State House. So yeah, a nice virtual enhancement there, or visual enhancement rather. Again, landscaping, street trees, and wider crosswalks. It's pedestrian safety is going to be increased. So you can see here, this is obviously we're doing bulb outs at the intersections where the sidewalk comes in. So the existing pedestrian crosswalk greatly shortened, as now you're only crossing 2 lanes of traffic. So there's an enhancement there from a safety standpoint. And again, these are just a couple of renderings of what the completed project will look like. Again, as I said before, there's a typical section. You got 2 travel ways, parking, green space, the bike lanes, a buffer, and then the wide sidewalks with to accommodate pedestrians as well as cafes and tables and that sort of thing. And I don't run through this quick because I think most of you have seen this, but feel free to stop me if there's any specific questions. Cost funding. So right now, based on the 2022 bid, we received the construction phase, basically the bid we received. This includes utilities. So we have some utility groups with Dominion, with the city of Columbia to move some to replace some sewer and water lines that are out there now that are conflicting with our project. Total construction cost right around 22 million. You can see your PE a little over $1 million. Total cost about $23 million. Based on the previous letting, we had close to 19 million. And unfortunately, we came up short. So this is an effort to fund the project moving forward and hopefully get a bid that we can award here next time. The next slide will show you the available funding now. It's a little difficult to see, but as you can see here, we got a lot of federal money, a lot of local partners. A lot of the federal money requires a 20% local match. So University of South Carolina, Richland CTC, Richland County through their pennies program, the Department of Administration, and then the City of Columbia also for their utility work contributed. What we're asking, or what we're hoping to today, I guess, is that the code this body has, as I understand it, $849,000 of TAP funds that are set to lapse if they're not used by the end of this fiscal year. This project obviously needs some funding, so we're hoping to use those funds to contribute to the project. So again, the match would be paid by the state in this case. So there's no additional local requirement based on that is lapsing codes tax fund. In addition to that, we are also adding some additional statewide TAP funds that are also subject to lapse that again are not specific to code. So that's shown down here at the bottom. So the only new funding sources based on the previous letting are the code's lapsing TAP funds as well as the SCDOT TAP flex down here that are both 80-20 with 20% being matched by the state and 80% being covered by the feds. So that's the current plan for funding moving forward. I believe that's my last slide, Dave. Yeah, next steps. We hope with approval, we hope to put the project back out in June to receive bids again. We hope by then, maybe the markets calm down a little bit and we can get a more more reasonable bid that it's easier to award, but that's where we are now, and I'd be glad to take any questions on the project or funding or anything that can help.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Hall.
what was the original estimate when this project was kicked off?
So when the project began, I really got, it was much less. It was, I think, in the $10 million range, something like that. The project was originally, I think the utility cost ended up being significantly more than maybe USC when the city of Columbia, whoever conceptualized the project initially, consistent with the Walt White head plan rather. But yeah, it certainly was a significant departure from that
Is
original.
that due to design change or?
I would say probably due to insufficient feasibility from the beginning, that probably more work could have been done on the front end to better identify the cost ramifications of these utilities and that.
This project was initiated when?
Around 2015, I believe, is when the original project first got kicked off.
7 years,
Yeah, it was,
120% escalation in cost.
yeah.
And you're not sure of this cost yet because
Well, we feel pretty good about the cost. That's based on an actual bid we received 6-8 weeks ago. So that's
Post-lapsing funds.
Yes.
Those are TAP funds.
That's correct.
What's the normal length of time for use of TAP funds?
The 3 years from when they get an allocation every 3 years. So Reginald will probably speak to that better than I, but
So you get your allocation and then plus 3 additional years, so in total 4 years.
And Reginald, remind me, please.
Yeah,
What's that?
Transportation alternative program.
Yeah.
It used to be called enhancement.
My concern is that, of course, whether or not our $400,000 for our TAP project is included in those lapsing funds. Project for sidewalks from South Lee Street in Batesburg, Leesville, $400,000. Project is 4 years old.
That would not be included in this. You probably apply through the DOT rule program, and we just talking about urban funds here.
yeah, these are.
But you're talking about 1 point. The bottom line was 1 point something million and other funds not related to codes.
So you don't mind scrolling back.
Would those be urban or rural?
You talking about the SCDOT?
Yes, flax funds.
So those are statewide funds. Yeah, I don't
So
really
those
know
could
anything about those
include
funds.
Those could include rural.
Those would include rural. Again, the funds that are directly given to or to be distributed through this body are the lapsing funds.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
The last.
Mr. Duval.
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, this is a project that has been pushed by the University of South Carolina and the city of Columbia for a number of years. I think.
Yes, sir.
As I said, 7 years. It is going to be a transformative project for that area of the city, and it continues the master plan that the university has for 10, 15 years now, going down towards the river on Green Street. All of that is working together. It also ties in with 2 other projects that maybe this group will get to support in a few years. One of them is a capital mall project that will do the Sumter Street, Green Street, Assembly, and Gervais Street areas, underground utilities, landscaping to make it a mall. That would be something that we would be proud of in the Midlands, and it would be representative of a great state capital. It was suggested in a 1904, 1901 study done by the group that did a lot of work with Biltmore House up in Asheville, that it should be a mall with underground utilities. They also said in that same report that the area around 5 Points should be made into a lake. I wish they had looked at that before they let 5 Points develop the way it has, because it needs to be a lake. We've spent a lot of time. I really support this transfer of allowing us to use that $849,000 to get this project up. I'm hoping that maybe if the money is available, we can continue on with the contract rather than to rebid.
Yes, sir. I believe that ship may have sailed, but certainly that's something I can check into. We have, usually about a month after we receive bids, and we have to give a yay or nay. But,
Mr. Lyman.
yes, sir.
Yeah, just two questions. I remember this discussion maybe a year and a half, or 2 years ago. With the big biplanes coming down into Pendleton, where I call them the 9/11 barrier, you know, the concrete that was put in there after 9/11. Will the biplanes continue over, or will they just end?
So the bike lanes on Pendleton as well. They'll take you down to Assembly and up to Summer Street. So yeah, they'll kind
So
of,
they'll turn right?
so yeah, they're going through the intersection, and I can certainly send an exhibit to kind of show how that works. But yeah, bikes will essentially join traffic, you know, crossing to make a left if you're turning to go towards Assembly Street.
Right, because those barriers
Yeah,
are.
and then there's a bike lane on the inside of the barriers that continues down to Assembly. And that's a good point. The barriers, we are actually modifying those. It's one good thing that happened by having to, not award the project yet, an impaired motorist apparently ran into the barricade sometime over Christmas break, which revealed that they were a little bit more significant than the Department of Administration led us to believe. So we discovered there's a pretty elaborate system of these steel bollards essentially that go underneath the ground and connected to these steel plates, which we're able to adjust our design. So we've slightly adjusted our design, but essentially we're going to be putting dropping a barrier on top of those steel. So they're not moving, but we're dropping a new barricade on top of that'll allow for some enhanced plantings around there. So you're still going to have for lack of a better term, 9/11 barriers there to prevent, you know, from a safety standpoint, but it is going to be visually enhanced there. And yeah, go ahead. And I was also going to highlight again, I think I saw this, but the Department of Administration has 1.6 million in it as well. So that was money. A lot of that money was state budget proviso money from 2019, I believe, that the state in-house looked to improve pedestrian and pedestrian safety for people working in the state house that are accessing restaurants and stuff and crossing over that intersection there, kind of shooting out between the barriers. So again, our project, I think, is going to address that need as well.
Mr. Bell.
Sorry,
My other question was concerning the comment and the stops. Probably the only one in the room who uses the comment. There are two shelter stops now at Pendleton and Sumter.
Right.
And since the university also contracts with the Comet, the campus service, any of the shelters in this area, or where there aren't any shelters, will they be added as part of this project?
As part of this project, there are no new shelters. I do know that USC is looking at an enhanced shelter, do something up there, kind of the horseshoe. So if you head up that direction,
Right.
I did say we did reach out to comment, and the bus routes, there are no buses that turn on to South Main Street, as you may be aware. So, because we do have tight turn radiuses up there, everything's getting necked down. So that was a major concern early. We're going to accommodate bus turning movements, but the only buses there are coming across South Main. So
Because what I'm looking at is just the long term, you know.
Sure.
We do this project and then 10, 15 years from now, people are standing out there in the cold, the rain, whatever it may be, because nobody thought, well, what if we're gonna put a bus line through?
No, that point's well taken, but yeah, the only thing I say to that is I know USC is planning an enhanced bus shelter up at the horseshoe, and I guess that's not great, that's a college, but yeah. College.
Mr. Bell. Okay, while I can easily be, support this project, this kind of thing. One of the things, just last night, I had a constituent call and asked me about the town of Ridgeway. What can we do to improve the streetscape? How can we beautify this? We have, within Fairfield County, this small communities, town, Ridgeway, for instance, you got other places. Is there anything that the COG can do to help us and trying to find funding, resources, or how to that we can help these small towns beautify their downtown landscape? Very good. I'll come back to that in a minute. Okay.
Yes, I just want to express a little bit about the 2 lanes down on Pendleton Street being turned into one, that we don't have a fair road situation, because traffic gets really, really bad coming down there with being a 2 lane, and now we're going to make it into 1 lane. I just want to express that. And my other question is on the TAP funds. What would cause us to lose TAP funds or be in a position almost?
So the first question, Pendleton Street, we're keeping the same lanes out there. I'm working with my assistant over there. So Pendleton Street, the only lanes are being removed are on South Main itself. So Pendleton, we're just kind of tying the
We
project
keep both
in.
lanes there.
So yes, Pendleton Street is gonna be, potentially, if you're making a left onto Pendleton from South Main, there's only one lane to do that. So there could be a slight delay that you don't experience now. But we did a traffic study. The vehicular volumes are relatively small. We don't anticipate any level of service type traffic operations issues. And just to kind of speak to pedestrians, we did a pedestrian count at each intersection, and I would venture to say this is probably the most pedestrians anywhere, and certainly in this region, and maybe even the state. We had at the intersection, I believe, of Green and South Main, I believe was the highest one. We had over 1,000 pedestrians in a single hour, and that was the hour, lunchtime, class change. So again, that's a huge pedestrian volume that again, this will help with the safety of that.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
The second question.
Second question. Second, lapsing TAP funds. Reggie, you mind if I pass out to you?
Yes. So once we award projects from the coast and field standpoint, those communities have about 4 years to have funds obligated. If all the fund is not obligated, then they're subject to lapse. So this is that remaining amount that was not obligated maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And so we try to
money to
catch
Columbia.
the money to projects that applied back in 2018, 2019.
Okay.
And if they're not obligated, then they're subject to lapse.
Gotcha. Mr. McMeekin, I believe had our last question.
Yes, sir. I don't know, a question, more of a statement that I do frequently green olive over in that area. And every time I walk out that front door, not that I'm a visionary, but you can see what a wonderful project this could be to transform that area. And I'm very excited to see these plans for the first time. I think you're on the right track. And to follow along with what Mr. Bell said, Ridgeway, hopefully at some point, we in Winsboro can also do something for our downtown to make it to more of a green space and livable space also. Thank you very much. And I'll say one other thing about Mount Zion, where I'd had many illustrious students graduate from there. I went from the 1st to the 7th grade. They were delighted to see me come at the 1st grade and delighted to see me go at the 7th grade.
Yes, sir. All right, Mr. Maddox, I think you've made an excellent presentation.
Thank you very
It's a
much.
very good project.
Could I make just a comment?
Let me finish.
All right. Sure.
I do think though, you hear the frustration, I use that word, from the smaller towns, and I've been chairman 9 months, and I hear that a little bit. So it's DOT, I've got a bunch of DOT folks here, I don't mind, let's keep them a priority too, certainly because we see the great things going on in some of our urban centers, like a Columbia or Greenville, I'm sure Charleston. But we don't see a lot going on in similar veins in the Batesburgs, the Ridgeways, the Winsburgs, the Irmos, the Newberries, and Eastovers and places like that. So I hope you've heard that today.
Yes, sir.
I think you have an excellent project. We're gonna take a motion after Mr. Pass has his last comment, then we're going.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to point out that I'm sure this will be a beautiful project and so forth, but every time the university is allowed to limit the traffic on the street or close one, it puts more and more pressure on all the other streets that are open. And I've been trying to get the city of Columbia to straighten out its signal system since before Mr. Duvall was elected to city council, and they just won't do it. And so what this does is it puts the pressure drives all the traffic onto the major streets, none of the secondary streets, the major streets, and creates critical traffic jams all over Columbia for no reason at all. And I just, I'm opposed to closing streets and taking away parking just as a given. But I'm sure this is a very attractive project, and certainly we understand that with the expansion of the university, and they'll take everything they can take. And I'm not trying to offend you folks who may be graduates of the University of South Carolina, but we should have stopped this years ago.
All right, very good. We'll be now towards comments.
Mr. Chairman, this is Walt McLeod. I don't know, can you hear me?
This is one of my mentors. We have to let him speak. Mr. McLeod.
I regret I'm gonna have to take leave of you. I'm sorry, I gotta go, but It's been an interesting presentation. So look to see you next time. Thank you so much.
Sure. Appreciate it, Mr. McLeod. Is there a
Mr. Chairman,
motion?
Mr. Chairman, may I make one comment, please?
Hold on, real quick. We have a motion, Mr. Duval. Is there a second?
Second.
Over here. You got that, Victoria? All right, comments, Mr. McMeekin, one more time.
I'm sorry, to follow along what Rusty says, I mean, as we all know, parking is extraordinarily important. And people do not want to walk in a lot of respects very far. So that's certainly a valid concept or idea to maintain, so.
Very good. And I saw some other heads nodding on that point as well. All right. So we have a motion and a second. No more comments, I don't believe, to amend the transportation improvement program to add approximately $849,000 to the South Main Street Streetscape project. If you're in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
If you are opposed,
No.
and that passes. Mr. Maddox, thank you for the presentation.
Mr. Chair, please let the minutes reflect that I recused myself from that vote.
Yes, sir. We got that. Very good. Thank you. All right. Well, we appreciate that. That was a good discussion, as Mr. McLeod said. Now we're going to go to something a little different. Item number announcement, overview of the family caregiver program. And Sanders, I've asked you to step forward, if you don't mind, as I introduce you. I'm always impressed how much the COG does. I've learned a lot being on the board. Ben is adding to our monthly agenda program Spotlight. Previously, we heard from Ms. Ann Harmon on the Ombudsman program. Today, we have an overview of another program, the Family Caregiver Support Program. It's enclosure 3 packet. We're glad to have with us Jenny Andrews. She's been at the COG for about 7 years. She has held multiple roles. She is now family caregiver advocate. She graduated from Carolina with a Master of Social Work. She has a passion for seniors and their families and enjoys finding new ways to serve them. Ms. Andrews, thanks for being with us. Tell us about the Family Caregiver Support Program.
So I guess just to start out with, is anyone actually familiar with the Family Caregiver Support Program? No, okay. Maybe. So we have 5 core services that we provide for family caregivers, and the family caregivers that we focus on are individuals who are taking care of an older loved one with deficit or with Alzheimer's. We also have a push from the federal and state level to focus on what they call older relative caregivers. And those are individuals over the age of 55 who are taking care of either a minor child that they are not the parent of, or they're taking care of an adult between the ages of 18 and 59 with a disability. The main goal of our services is to prevent caregivers from getting burned out. Caregivers experience a tremendous amount of stress to the point where it can cause health problems, hospitalizations. They tend to put their own health needs on the back burner to the point where there's some pretty alarming statistics of caregivers passing before the person that they're caring for. Our goal is to keep people in their homes as long as possible and as long as it is safe. And so our job is to support those caregivers so that they can do that. We do that by providing information to them about the services that are available in their area, helping them access those services. We provide options for individual counseling, support groups, caregiver learning and education. The main thing that people focus on with our program is really respite care, and respite is intended to be a short break for caregivers. The way we do that in our program is by issuing vouchers to pay for temporary in-home care services, temporary adult daycare services, or short-term facility stays at assisted living or nursing homes. The last service that we provide is a limited amount of supplemental services, and that generally includes things like incontinence supplies, nutritional supplements, any kind of assistive technology that makes things safer or easier for the caregiver or their loved one. And I know in the enclosure's got our current funding levels, just so you can see kind of where we are with our budget, what we've already allocated, what we've already spent for the year. We are working on some new initiatives for some of our caregivers. With some of our new funds from the American Rescue Plan, we're hoping to fund some individual counseling with licensed therapists or counselors or social workers. So the caregivers have the opportunity to have the mental health support, have the social system support, and learn new coping mechanisms to deal with their stress and just the overall overwhelm of caring for their loved ones. Also with our American Rescue Plan funds that we got in this past year, we are focusing some additional respite on caregivers who are dealing with long COVID themselves. It's affecting their health. We're focusing on people who became caregivers because their loved ones had COVID. I have one family in particular I talked to last week. Both parents were independent. They were up, moving, relatively active seniors. They had COVID not once, but twice. And now they are both needing extensive assistance on oxygen 24/7. And their daughter has been thrown into this caregiving position while trying to work full-time and maintain her own family. So we're providing extra respite for those types of situations. And we're actually seeing a lot more of those than I was really anticipating. We're also seeing, as a result of COVID, a lot more people coming home sooner from hospital, sooner from rehab, needing more acute care than what their caregivers are generally comfortable or really familiar with providing care for. So we're trying to help with that, provide additional resources where we can, get them directed to other services, help them apply for anything that will help them. This past year, with the help of one of our interns, we are also working on expanding the services for our seniors raising children. Right now, we have between 60 and 65 grandparents who are taking care of minor children, anywhere between 1 and 4 children. And for those families during the year, we generally provide back to school assistance, things like buying clothing, school supplies, making sure they have what they need to be successful for the new year. And then we're working on expanding our respite offerings for those families as well. That's been something we haven't focused on as much for the last couple of years, but we've added in services for like extracurricular activities, paying for school fees, dance classes, gymnastics, helping the kids get out energy, while also giving the parent or the grandparents a break. Also things like tutoring, school fees, any type of thing that we can take off the grandparents' plates. So like I said, the next thing that we're really planning on working on is focusing on setting up partnerships with counseling organizations, licensed therapists, so that we can refer our caregivers who need those services. We're also working on increasing education, and hopefully now that COVID has calmed down a bit, we can resume our support groups that we have in our office. We've been referring them to outside sources for the last couple of years, but we're hoping to start that back up. And we are also working on plans to increase our outreach and get more of this information out to the public so we can serve more people. Do they have questions?
Ms. Andrews, good stuff. I think you're doing some noble work, and I know all of us that had family members maybe that one of us or somebody had to take care of. Well, those are hard days. And
It's
so,
a lot.
so
It
thank
really is,
you for,
especially these last couple of years with COVID, it's just added another level of social isolation to people who are already socially isolated.
well, I know this folks are glad to have yours and your colleagues' help, and good stuff today. We just want to give you a round of applause for all you're doing. And Chase is an intern. Chase, thanks. And you go to USA. Good for you. All right, we're glad to have you with us today. Thanks for what you're doing as well. All right, Jenny, great job. All right, next item, COG rule project status update from Mr. Darren Ledbetter. Mr. Ledbetter's been with us before. Is he online or in person? There he is. And he did such a good job. We asked him to come back. You're a regular here. And so you have rule project updates.
Yes, sir, I did. Today we're just going to kind of go over some quick acronyms and terminology. We'll kind of hit those as to the presentation. If there's anything that you see that you're unsure of, we'll kind of discuss that. And we're going to discuss the road body projects, our rural bridge replacement projects, as well as our interstate rehab and reconstruction projects that are through CMCOG in the rural areas of COG. There's one widening project, US 1 Phase 2. It's out towards Batesburg, Leesville. Currently, it's under construction, and we expect it to be completed this summer, potentially. And this is a funding chart, kind of a breakdown. You can see there, PE is preliminary engineering, ROW's right of way, and then construction is construction CE&I for construction engineering and inspection funds. Oh, excuse me. Currently, we're under budget for all of those. You can see that our expenditures are about $6.97 million for the project. Those kind of lag about a month or two. There are two bridge replacement projects, US 378 over Horse and Hollow, that's out 378 towards Saluda. We are substantially complete with that project, which means all construction items have been completed. We're currently working through punch lists, and as soon as those are addressed, we'll initiate project closeout. The SC 34 over Norfolk Southern Railway, it is left October 2021, so late last year, and we're expecting a construction time of about 2 years. So fall of 2023 is when we can expect that to be completed. For interstate rehabs, we have I-26, two different sections, both in Newberry County, 6075 and 75 to 85. 6075 is under construction, and then 75 to 85 is expected to let this fall. Really, that's what we have for CMCOG projects in the rural areas. Are there any questions? Great. Yeah, my name is Darren Levitter. Feel free to contact me. There's my email, my phone number. If there's any questions you have, I'd be glad to help.
Well, thank you for your point. That's a question.
I'm sorry, are you involved in secondary roads?
Yes and no, sir. It depends on what the secondary.
SC 34,
SC 34.
that is Platte Springs, Pond Branch, SC 601, East Avenue, whatever. Scheduled for rehab, resurfacing, and safety features.
I'm not aware of that. If it's a safety feature that comes through our safety office, but I can check in with those guys and see kind of what the status of that.
That'd be great. We'll give Mr. Hall's contact information. Y'all get. All right, anything else?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to again make a statement. I keep seeing all these presentations, but I don't see Fairfield. So, and I know we have a bridge out in Fairfield, and I called the state about it. And of course, they say Cobb County get a whole lot of back and forth, you know, which I mean, it's a new bridge. We already have 10 out. And so now there's a new one that's out. So is it possible maybe we can get something to show what's been done by counties? So the various, and not just for his program, but for most of the programs that happen with Central Mills. So we can kind of see how resources are allocated allocated within the various counties within the college.
Sure, yes, ma'am. The projects that you saw up here are the only COG projects that are currently in the CMCOG for the rural tip. There are other projects that go from our bridge replacement program, which are national federal funds, but they're not coming necessarily through COG. So they're with SCDOT. But if that's something that you're interested in, I'm sorry?
Yes, if you can get it.
Yes, ma'am, we can definitely get those together. We do have projects you were on. Current projects that have money allocated towards them.
I know you try to send me online too, but you might have 31,000 constituents, so if you could just send it, I would appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am, we'll definitely take a look at that. Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Anything else? And that looks to be a great report. You let us know. We'll ask Mr. Ledbetter to go follow for
Okay, that'll work.
All right, and thanks for coming. We look forward to having you back again if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. All right, now we're item number 3, impact how a 2021 infrastructure bill affects South Carolina Transportation Network. We're going to be joined, I'm glad to join Ms. Michelle Peterson. She is a leader in our DOT. You better call him Big Shot, man. She is Director of Statewide Planning. Can we see her? I would rather, she's online, I guess. I don't know if we have flyers. I would like to see her make the presentation if that was possible. Ms. Peterson, we're glad to have you. And I know everybody here thinks that infrastructure bill, boy, we'd all like a piece of that pie. And thank you for telling us about it.
Good afternoon, Chairman, and other guests this afternoon in the board meeting. My name is Michelle Peterson. As the Chairman said, the Director of Planning for the South Carolina Department of Transportation. I've been here a number of years, and it's my pleasure to present to you today how the infrastructure bill impacts the state of South Carolina and its transportation network. Next slide, please. And the next slide. Thank you. The new bill authorizes approximately $1 trillion in funding for surface transportation, rail, transit, water, sewer, and broadband, including about $550 billion in new funding. The authorization It authorizes Surface Transportation Authority until 2026. So that's a good thing that the bill covers funding allocations through 2026. With familiar strings of that are current to programs that many of you are familiar with, but then also additional funds were provided. It created new programs for climate change and resiliency. We've been hearing a lot of things about, the environment, climate change, and so forth. So this bill has programs relative to that. It adds new formula programs outside of reauthorization funded through the general fund for bridges and electric vehicles, or EV, as that is often referred to, for charging stations and fueling stations. Numerous discretionary grant programs have also been established. Some of those grant programs include, as I mentioned earlier, electric vehicle programs. We're still waiting on guidance for that. SCDOT has identified an EV director, and we're beginning to, as required by federal guidelines, to develop a plan as to how we will address some of the needs in terms of these alternative fuel vehicles. Particularly the focus of deploying electric charging stations along designated alternative fuel corridors along corridors and the community. So we're looking at interstates, we're looking at some of the primary routes, evacuation routes, and so forth, but more on that to come. We're still sorting through guidance, trying to determine what it is that is required and so forth. There's another new program, PROTECT, PROTECT, the PROTECT program, which is focusing on planning, resilience improvements, community resilience, and evacuation routes and at-risk coastal infrastructure. DOT plans to focus these funds on large drainage projects and its evacuation routes. There's another climate, again, it's addressing, our air quality and so forth, and our focus on that is going to be looking at transportation system management and operation strategies. In other words, TSMO. You may hear discussion about TSMO strategies in terms of keeping traffic moving, reducing congestion, and so forth. Those are oftentimes some of your lower cost alternatives that we can see improve the traffic flow and congestion in those congested areas. Federal transit funds were increased by approximately 30%. And the transportation alternative funds were increased by approximately 67%. So we're still trying to get information out to the MPOs and COGs concerning that. You should be getting something very, very shortly in terms of allocations to your TMAs. Next slide. Okay, the reauthorization, what does that mean overall? Well, previously, as you're aware, we had just approximately just over 700 million in federal aid funds annually. The new bill, which was signed November 15th, 2021, increased that funding to approximately $1 billion by 2026. All right, and again, increases to about 1 billion by 2026. There's an increase in transit funds. It codifies the one federal decision being used on our I-526 project, which is a good thing because what that says is that the bill addresses timing for acquiring or securing permits for these large construction projects. That is oftentimes a delay in delivery of projects. So there's a tension in terms of how quickly we can coordinate with other agencies to acquire those permits to begin work on projects. And then the transportation alternative funding increase. As you can see on the graph, how we ramp up gradually from this year at about a level of about 900 million or so to just over $1 billion by 2026. Right? Opportunities and challenges. Now, this increased funding has given us an avenue to fill some of the gaps in programs, and the opportunities provided there was allow us to at least try to close that gap in GuideShare programs. As you're aware, the GuideShare funding level annually for the state has been level for many years. MPOs and COGs received notification last fall of the commission's approval of an increase in the God Share program, but I'll talk a little bit about that coming up. This new money also, from a state perspective, requires additional funding to cover the match requirement for those funds, which could be anywhere on this slide. I know it says 70 to 80 million, but that could be as much as $100 million to cover the additional funds that will be coming to the state of South Carolina. Significant dollars will be allocated in discretionary grants, as I'm sure that many of you have heard, where DOT in the past has historically not fared very well with receiving grants as opposed to other states. But then we're seeing some changes in that. We're seeing where these grants are being made available to local entities and so forth, but then we're still waiting on guidance as to how to manage that or what the requirements will be concerning that. Next slide, please. Okay. What does that mean for our 10-year plan? Funds. Where you see, the DOT focuses on the majority of the funding in our existing priorities, highlighted with the plus signs in blue. So those are our existing programs. The green programs are our new areas of focus, which would be our transportation system management and operations, which is the TSMO. You're going to hear a lot about TSMO in the coming year or so. Rest areas, we've begun addressing rest areas. Capital drainage projects with some of the new funding under some of the categories that they've identified in the new bill, and electric vehicles. What this also, these new funds also allow the opportunity to pay off our state infrastructure bank debt. So we will be debt free after that payment. So all of these things are being worked on since the bill was just signed last the end of the year. We're still waiting on guidance. We're still waiting on some allocations of funds, but these are some of the things that we're anticipating going forward. Okay. Budget priorities. New federal funds will not necessarily have flexibility to do all of DOT's needs, such as the resilience and climate control, new categories. But we are looking at increasing our God Share program, as I said earlier, to 238 million, which is an additional 100 million over the course of the next few years, maybe as many as that. That increase has already begun with a new allocation, a new increased allocation to our MPOs and COGs, utilizing $20 million to calculate an allocation based on formula. And then an additional $6 million was added to that to bring everyone up to a minimum of $4 million in funds. That areas, some of that has already, we are continuing our focus on bridges to get bridges to a repair. Drainage is a focus, as well as our interstates. We're looking at filling these gaps on interstates. Focus is on 95, 26, and in and around 85, as you've heard the governor discuss in some of his press conferences. Issue still outstanding is that we won't be able to solve with the new funds everything that we need. There's still an increasing need for funds to address maintenance relative to growth, as well as identifying the new federal funds. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this God Share program. I covered this more, but I just have to make sure that I covered it sufficiently enough. Our God Share program has been at 138 million for several years. We had a workshop back in the fall with the MPOs and COGs to discuss some of the things that we were looking to try to accomplish in the coming years. With this being a significant time with census numbers coming in, how will that affect how funding allocations? We were anticipating the signing of the funding bill. So now that we've been successful with that, the commission approved back in October this $100 million increase in God Share funds for a total annual allocation of 238 million. So I'm hopeful that this increased funding will tool our MPOs and COGs to be able to address, more projects, address those problem or congested areas within their regions. Next slide, please. The Regional Mobility Program. You've heard that probably before, and that is that was approved also in October as the new name of what is currently known, or what you may be familiar with, as the Guide Share Program. The approach that we have, based on much of the legislation, is geared toward addressing congestion, really looking at what the issues are, determining what purpose and need is project.
I got to lay it the presentation won't stop.
Oh, okay.
As well as making, being good stewards of the funds and making
Antonio,
where we put our investments. Okay. So,
I'll let you go, 'cause I don't know how long it takes.
Thank you for your patience, Ms. Peterson. If you're online, please mute. We're about to wrap up in a minute. Ms. Peterson, appreciate your patience. Doing an excellent job for us.
As you can see, this is a table of the funding increase. If you would focus in, and I hope that everyone can see these tables very well. In 2022 was the first allocation. The MPOs and COGs were notified of their increase, and they were given the go ahead to start programming projects based on that. The 2023 funding allocation has not been approved yet, so MPOs and COGs are asked to continue their planning based on the current allocation at 164 million until we receive the information, can reevaluate the formula concerning the census, and if there are any impacts to any of the census areas or the transportation planning areas, we will then go back and recalculate that allocation based on formula and continue to ramp up that funding until we reach 238 million in 2027. Next slide. Okay. As you can see here, here's a table of that allocation for MPO and COG. And I've talked to you a little bit about, the year one allocation, and then the revision to the formula. But we did address that because we hear what you say in terms of needing additional funds.
So right there, rule is up, I believe, was going from 2.8 to 4 million, and Coates is going, I believe it was from 20 million to 21 point something. Let's see that.
21.7.
21.7. All right, thank you, Ms. Peterson. Keep going, start.
Next slide, please. In determining, as we move forward in the development of the new regional mobility program, we are continually coordinating with our MPOs and COG partners. But we've developed policy elements based on the new current bill as to how we look at transportation from a true multimodal approach. So some of the considerations of policy elements are access, time efficiency, reliability, safety, travel options, and land use and planning, transportation linkage. There's been a lot of discussion as to how to balance the expenditure of funds. There's a need, but then we also, you are, as a council of government, in coordination with your stakeholders, are charged to look at development as well. We want to get ahead of that curve. In years past, it's always been that we've been reactionary in addressing congestion and so forth, but we can't ignore potential development or the desire for future growth. So our approach to transportation planning will be taken into account all of these elements. Next slide, please. Okay. Just a little update on the census. The counties should have received their census figures a few months ago. It's anticipated that by the summer of this year, we are expecting to receive information on expanded areas of urbanization for the MPOs and COGs based on the 2020 census. I have since heard that they've not formally changed that schedule, but we could see some slight delays on receiving those figures. And then between the summer of 2022 and 2023, we expect to work with the respective MPOs and COGs to make any final adjustments to areas. So we have begun those discussions. Remaining gaps in our program, although we've received that increase in funding, we still, as I said earlier, have a need for routine maintenance on the roadways. It is wonderful that we can expand or improve roadways, but then maintenance is also very critical to keeping up our system, the upkeep of our system. And of course, excuse me, I'm sorry. And of course, our bridge program. There's a huge need statewide, and we are moving toward, trying to identify those needs based on analysis of needs and bridge ratings, but to make sure that we can try to at least continue to align with our proposed progress in our 10-year plan. So there is still a gap. Next steps, what do we do? Anticipate guidance on the implementation and management of the new funding categories. We're still waiting to hear that. As we get that information, we will be sharing it with the MPOs and COGs. Continue to evaluate legislation and identify opportunities to use funds to advance DOT's existing priorities. Develop proposed 10-year plan revision based on the budget that we have. Work with the General Assembly to try to identify additional state funds to be able to match the potential federal funds that we would receive, and then continue monitoring guidance pertaining to new grant programs. Okay. That concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Any questions, Ms. Peterson, Mr. Bell? Yes, one of the things I see is these charging stations could be a bigger use for economic development, especially in these local and rural areas. How can we try to get federally funded charging stations in our community?
That's a very good question. Thank you for that. With this new funding, the states were charged with identifying a lead. We have recently identified a lead to develop plans as required by federal highways. We are still waiting to acquire information or receive information regarding the requirements for charging stations for some of these other areas, some of the new areas. But the first step is for us to develop a plan, which is due back to the federal government by August. Once we develop that plan, then we'll know better what direction we need to go. We're starting the discussions with industry experts that have experience with charging stations, installation of charging stations, as well as utility companies and so forth. So we are very early in the infancy of this program, but as we receive information, I will certainly share it with you.
May I follow by Mr. Bell on that question? Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I know that Toyota is the leader as far as EV vehicles go now. And that beyond the house charging, those rapid charging stations for people traveling, which are going to be so important. And as for Ridgeway, being near the interstate, that sort of thing, I am also interested in seeing, no one has a crystal ball, of course, but seeing how this does develop, because obviously more vehicles are going to EV. There's a trend, especially among the younger people. But I would love to continue to see this information brought back before us.
And I
Very
will
good.
share your comments with our lead for our EV program. And again, we will certainly keep you informed as progress we make on that.
Ms. Peterson, you have a lot to do with the new infrastructure bill. You've done an excellent job explaining it to us today.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
This is Shakese Newton. I'll be very brief. Thank you for the presentation. I would love to follow up separately to hear more about what you're going to be doing to be more proactive as it relates to development. That's a huge concern in my area. looking at the growth in houses and how we'll deal with that from a transportation perspective. And then Mr. Chair asked if you haven't already, it would be helpful if this presentation could be distributed.
Yes, and Ben will email out all the slides. So that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Ms. Peterson, I believe we'd like to have you back down the road. Would that be okay?
That certainly will, certainly will. I appreciate your invitation, and if you have any additional questions, please let me know. And then I also will ask that, bear with us because this, information regarding the new bill is trickling in, and we are working, very as quickly as possible to be able to interpret that and to provide the information back out to the MPOs and COGs.
Great. We're going to ask you to come back in a few months. I got one final question. I told you I was going to ask you. Ben's going to talk in a minute about the raise application periods of April 14th. I was all excited about that, but it seems like those are really hard to get. Is that correct? Is it worth our time? Some of our folks applying for the raise fund, which the application periods in 3 weeks.
Well, there is a lot of effort that goes into compiling a good application. Mr. Malden and I did speak briefly about that. Sometimes it can be difficult if you don't already have a project identified for the raise grant to be able to pull together the required information for a packet within that short period of time. What I do advise though, is if there is someone or an entity that's interested in applying, I've seen raise for the last 2 to 3 years. There are other large grant opportunities. The last one was infra. Raise is typically during the early spring of the year. Infra is usually the summer to the late fall. To go ahead and pull those funding, those notice of funding opportunities, which is the rubric, so to speak, of that grant application, what it must include and what is required, and review that and prepare. I would say prepare for the next round if you determine that you don't have time or there's not appropriate time for you to put a package together by April. I think the deadline is either April 15th or somewhere thereabout.
If one of our member of government wants help with that, should they see Mr. Simmons or someone at DOT if they're looking at doing something like that down the road?
Start with Mr. Simmons.
Okay, how about, and very good. All right, well, Ms. Peterson, you have made an excellent presentation, and we're going to ask you to come back maybe by the summer, something like that. If that sounds okay.
If we want to have a conversation with her, because I'm really concerned about some of the grants in small rural communities not being able to have the capacity to write grants to try to see what we can. And I'm already in conversation with Congressman Carter's office to try to minimize the amount of match requirements for grants. But my question is there a number for her to, or is there a way to contact her directly to talk to her?
Ms. Peterson, can Ben email your contact information out? Would that be okay, please?
Yes, it would be.
Okay, and I think Mr. Dan makes a great point. In a small town like Newberry, these application processes are difficult. All of the larger counties and cities, they have, and good for them, they have hired folks, which is a great idea, to submit applications, grants. You make a good point there.
Which we could probably talk about and work on, because I mean, even talk to the infrastructure folks, we don't, their money as it relates to rural communities.
Right.
And we can have to talk about.
That sounds good. All right, Ms. Peterson, that was great. All right, we're going to pass. Treasurer Simmons thankfully says has a good idea. We're going to delay item 4 to executive director's report. Ben, in 60 seconds. What's your answer?
Okay, I'm just gonna mention the rates again. Applications are due April 14th by 5 p.m. We'll be passing additional information out for the next round as well, as that comes out. Okay. Next item. If I had sent this out earlier, but I would like to reiterate it again, we're doing an aging survey statewide. If you would go to our homepage on our website, look under news releases, you'll see the survey link. If you please do that. And if you are following us on Facebook, we'd like you to share on our Facebook page and like us, because we're looking at that every day and sending information about the breach now. Central Midlands will also be releasing a call for projects for Section 50-10 programs in its Transportation Alternatives Program. We're happy to work with anyone. If you have a question, please see Reginald Simmons. And then finally, CMCOG staff are participating in a panel focused on economic development, transportation, housing, and community development at the Allen University Community Leaders Institute, taking place this weekend, Friday and Saturday. One last thing I wanted to mention is.
I'll just stay up here on this slide. How about explain the, releasing the call for projects for 5310 program? What does that mean?
Each and every year, we go out for a call for projects to work with our administrative agencies where they can apply to the 52 program to apply for vehicles that we
Right.
need to serve their clients.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, one last thing I wanted to mention in the ombudsman program, if you are a new board member or a board member that has not been able to get a conflict of interest form filled out, please see Ms. Anna Harmon. She'll be happy to help you with that. That is something that we're required to have on file to stay in compliance with the South Carolina Department of Administration in the ombudsman program.
Super, Ben. Thank you very much. If there is nothing else, a motion by Mr. Pass to adjourn, second by Mr. Bush. All in favor, aye? Adjourn. Thank y'all for joining us online as well.
Thank you.
Hold on, somebody for that adjournment.
You look at me. That means you do that. I say, look.